Welcome to the Smithburg Auto Scoreboard Show. It's a Friday night, and we got some great guests here for you. We got Coach Cheney of the Lone Tree Lions. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dave.
And we got Jeff Mills of Real Smart Highlights. Welcome to the program, Jeff.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, Coach Cheney, you got a big win tonight against the Wapalo Indians. I think we're just going to kick it off with your game. Tell us a little bit about this important division matchup.
Yeah, we got off to a good lead in the first quarter, and the second quarter, Wapalo ended up going into halftime with a 1-point lead. The third quarter, we were able to kind of pull away a little bit, and going into the fourth quarter, we were able to stretch our lead to 10. We must have fallen asleep and got a little too comfortable because Wapalo went on a really big run and was down by 3 with the final possession, and they were able to hit a corner 3. I believe it was Cheney. Oh, what is Cheney? Yep. He hit a corner 3 to send it into overtime, hit it at the buzzer. So Wapalo is pretty hyped up, and we got into overtime, and Wapalo, I think 2 of their starters, Kinnick and Justin Faulkner, both fouled out pretty early into overtime. And I think that kind of gave us a little bit of ease, and we were able to walk away with a 68-60 win in overtime.
68-60 win in overtime. What does this leave your record stand at overall and in the North Division?
In the North, that's our second win. I'm not sure how many losses we have, but that was a big win for us. I think that moves us above L&M, and we might still be a game below Wapalo. So obviously, it's a big win if we want to have a chance to get ahead of Wapalo. But yeah, that was second conference win and fourth win overall.
Well, that's outstanding. 4 wins already, though. That's pretty good. And you've had a lot of competitive games too on top of all that. Well, talk about your leading scores for the night.
Oh, we got a monster game from senior John Doffelt with a career high of 21 points today. He was pretty lights out, so that was huge. We were getting him the ball, and he was making, I think he went 7 for 8 on free throws, so very clutch in that performance. I think Dom Garcia had 17, and a lot of those came in the second half, and kind of rounding out our good night of scoring would have been sophomore Jackson Lyon with a career high of 13 points.
Outstanding. Was there any great defensive play tonight?
Yeah, we played pretty solid defense. We play a pretty solid 2-3, but what we fall into is we work really hard and we get the opponent to miss the shot, and we have a hard time boxing out sometimes. So we played great defense. We just gave up a lot of seconds. Wapalo is not a big physical team by any means. Their tallest kid is their point guard, but they crashed the boards very well for being undersized. And I warned our team about that beforehand, and that was the one thing that kept Wapalo in it. They do a really good job of crashing the glass.
All right. What about performers for Wapalo? I know they got some really good players, including that Faulkner kid.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their box score ended up being. Faulkner had a pretty solid game. The Kinnick Richenberger, he had some monster threes for them down the stretch. I'd say those 2 guys, the 2 seniors on the team, they had a really good game for them tonight.
Well, you can't see it, but Jeff and I are saluting you for the grittiness and what it takes to get wins. We know, when teams have been grinding all year long, these wins are big, aren't they?
No doubt. And I mean, anytime you can avenge a loss from earlier, especially losing on our home court, we knew we kind of had to return the favor. And it's, Wapalo is not an easy place to get a win. We have to travel to get there, but going home with the win is great. Winning a game in overtime on the road feels just a little better. So we were fortunate to walk away with the win tonight.
Well, what is this win going to do, for your, general motivation? And I just always believe that wins breed other wins, and they breed a lot of confidence and everybody's smiling at the end of the night. You think you can use some of this momentum and move forward with it?
Yeah, no doubt. This week we were able to win 2 out of 3 games. I mean, that shows that we're kind of going in the right direction. And our next game is at Waco. And the first time we played Waco was a 56-53 loss. It's a very close game. But I was talking to Coach Ross yesterday, and he was joking around. They got a win versus L&M, and so he was telling me they were warmed up and ready for us. So I'm hoping that getting an overtime victory kind of evens that playing field and makes us ready to play Waco on Tuesday.
Well, that sure is exciting. Jeff, do you got any questions about this game?
Not really. I just wanted to congratulate Coach, on a nice win. I watched Lone Tree a couple times this year. I've been impressed, Win-loss column might not be where you want it, but your team's competitive every time I watch you play. I mean, your team always plays and competes. You're in there in a lot of games, and so I congratulate you, and I hope your team takes this and builds on it and keeps excelling.
Well,
yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, Jeff, you and I was at the same game. Did you see it the same way I did?
Yeah, I did. Columbus, come out and did their thing, but Highland, they may again. They're on the lower rung of the conference standings, but they still competed. They played hard tonight.
They got a kid named Hazlitt that impressed the heck out of me. I don't know how many points he had, but I bet it was 20 or more. He seems to have all the skills to play a great game of basketball.
He does. I watched him play at Wapalo and hit a 3-point buzzer beater that gave them their first conference win of the season, I believe. So, he's a great ball player.
Yeah, he really was. But the Columbus Wildcats put 7 wins on the board this year, and it doesn't take them long to do it. I think they had a 2-game positive on the win side. I think they got 2 more wins than they got losses. I know, Coach, you used to coach Columbus, and it's a lot of these same characters, but their games are developing. I think this could be as much as the most wins in like 30 years over there, maybe since you were in high school there. What do you think about Columbus getting 7 wins?
Yeah, obviously with the senior class, I would have coached them when they were sophomores, so obviously pretty familiar with most of their personnel. But I think just from thinking back to when I coached them to coaching them this year and watching some games, the big difference from a couple of years ago is they do a really good job of playing as a team, and it seems like guys really accept their roles on the team. And seven wins to start the year for Columbus, at this point of the season, is not something that's very familiar territory for that school. So a heck of a start to the season for Columbus.
Well, Jeff, a lot of players played great, but it did seem like not everybody had the same role, but they all seemed to do whatever they needed to do to make things happen. There's a player I wanted to ask you about tonight, Gabe Zuniga. I call him the Golden Foot from his time as a kicker for the football team, but he was a rebounding machine. I thought he was Dennis Rodman out there tonight. What did you think about his game, and particularly how many boards he brought down?
Yeah, I mean, he was pulling down rebounds from everywhere, and I think, I watched him earlier on in his career, and he was knocking down threes, so he has the ability to shoot. But like you said, the kids are kind of finding their roles on where they can help out and really be, an asset to their team. And he did that tonight in a big way of, pulling down rebounds like you talked about and playing great defense and feeding Ellis Hill's carrier the ball, who had a big night. And, like Coach Cheney said, the kids are kind of finding their way of what they can do to make their team great.
Yeah, it maybe don't have to be scoring, but it could be, picking up rebounds, picking up loose balls. Now, a guy that did a great job of picking up loose balls and transitioning from defense to offense and played a terrific game all around is Drake Marin. Drake the Snake, I've been calling him. What did you think of his performance tonight?
Yeah, like I said, I got to know him too a little bit over the past few years, and he's a great kid. He's one of the nicest kids I met. Very humble, but he can shoot the three. He knocked down some big shots tonight for him, but he was coming up with steals. His defense is great. He plays great defense for them and comes up with a lot of turnovers, steals, that kind of thing. And yeah, I thought he had a great game tonight.
Yeah, it was terrific. But the player of the game was Ellis Hill's carrier, a little poison, as we like to call him. Really put a lot of points on the board. I would guess it's around 30. I don't know exactly, but he was sure lighting up the scoreboard, wasn't he?
Yeah. Is he a sophomore or a junior? Do you know?
He's a junior.
Junior. Junior? Okay. I couldn't remember, but yeah, he's a good one. He's a great player down there in the South in the FCISC, and he's got a bright future ahead of him, I think. He's really blossoming into a great basketball player. He put up 41 against somebody not too long ago, you know. So yeah, he had another big night for Columbus, and it was a great performance.
Yeah, it kept getting big leads, and then Highland just kept coming back and coming back. Seemed like they're early in the fourth quarter, they were just scoring at will. You know, every time they got the ball, they cut it down to, I think, 9 points at one time, and they were standing, but 10 and 12 points behind. But Ellis Hills Carrier did kind of step in and hit some big threes and things to kind of shut some of the rallies back down. Is there anything else about this game that you got anything to say about? Any other players you want to point out or anything?
The young kid Miguel, you kept calling him. He had a nice game tonight.
Yeah, he had a big game against a Hillcrest. A kid that had a big game against Hillcrest was Totemeyer. He did everything. He did what he needed to do tonight. You know, he didn't have any big time plays, and so did I call this kid the gunslinger, Elliot Wesley. Because he just sounds like he's got an 1880s kind of good name for a wanted poster or something, but he's got a lot of heart. All those kids played their hearts out tonight, didn't they?
They did. They wanted that win, and
they wanted to get that 7th win. They've been wanting it, and tonight they get it, and they make a little history on Round Guy Radio. One thing that did surprise me tonight was that one of the coaches got a technical foul, and it wasn't Coach Karbakis. I think he got 4 in his first 8 games or something, but I don't think he's had any sense, since he was fired up for sure on the sidelines. But overall, I thought that there was a very clean game, and I didn't think that there was a tremendous amount of fouls called. I don't know what I've seen Highlands coach before get a technical foul, and I didn't understand why before, and I didn't understand this one.
Yeah, I think a 3-pointer was put up by Ellis Hills Carrier, and the defensive guy tipped it, and the ball went out of bounds, and they called it.
They're going to give it back to Columbus.
Ball, and it should have been the other way, and he didn't like it, and he said a few things, and that's where the technical comes from.
Well, it's always exciting moments all the way through there. But I don't know we need to talk about anything else about this game other than it was a terrific game. Columbus was not to be denied tonight. They wanted the 7 wins. They get the 7 wins. And I don't know what the ceiling is on them, but I don't think this is the last win that they're going to get. And I think that whole Columbus community seems to be kind of rallying behind this team and excited about the direction it's going.
Yeah, it's always good to see a program who struggles start to turn things around, and start to find some success and see the people who support them and their families and all that. It's always fun to see. So.
All right. Well, I think that's enough about those first 2 games. We're about 15 minutes into it, and we've only got 2 scores in, so we probably better pick up the pace a little bit. Jeff, go ahead and give me a score of a game.
Well, there wasn't too much going on outside of the North. Inside the North, I guess I should say, between Coach Cheney's game tonight and the game we talked to. The other game I seen going on was the Hillcrest and Winfield game, which is a big one. Winfield could have tied that up for first place in the conference standings, but Hillcrest come out on top on that one, 62-42.
62-42. That's quite a few points to score against a Winfield Mount Union. You've had some low-scoring battles with Winfield Mount Union, Coach Cheney. Well, I don't know if I've seen a team much better than Hillcrest this year. We talk a lot about all the strong teams in the South. I ain't 100% sure Hillcrest couldn't go toe-to-toe with most of them. What do you think, Coach Cheney?
Yeah, Hillcrest, they're a very balanced team. It seems like, I like to talk guys playing into their roles. And Hillcrest, you talk about a team where every single guy to the end of their bench knows exactly what is expected out of them, and they don't have off nights because guys just accept their roles. And yeah, like you said, Hillcrest plays great defense, and kind of Hillcrest to me is no different than they were 20 years ago when they were IMS. if you miss the shot or you turn it over against Hillcrest, more times than not, it leads to points. And yeah, Hillcrest, they can make it tough. The fact they were able to, like you said, put up 62 points on Winfield is pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, basketball is kind of a funny game, and I don't know for sure if this score is right, but Hillcrest lost to Keota. But I saw, and sometimes these scores aren't right, but I did see where it said English Valley beats Keota tonight. You never know, what's going on, but that was what, that was what I'm going to try to look on the KCI scoreboard if it'll come up here. But it does show English Valley Bears 55, Keota Eagles 49. I text Andy McGuire, but I haven't heard anything back from him. Man, I tell you, these everybody's good. Lone Tree, has got 2 wins this week. I know New London has been winning some games here lately. Van Buren picked up a win over Fairfield. Some of these kind of underdogs or teams that haven't had a lot of wins are becoming pretty dangerous here in the second half of the season. Have you played English Valley? You got a win over English Valley recently, didn't you?
Yeah, that's who we played this past Monday.
So you got a win over them. They had a 6-4 record or something like that. But I think they went even into Keota and win this game. That is no, I guess it was it on the road? Yeah, I guess it was on the road at English Valley. Why they got some good players, or what's going on with English Valley? Usually they're not beating schools like Keota.
Yeah, they have, I believe they have a kid named Everett Bender. He's having a really solid season. I think going into the game against us earlier in the week, he was averaging close to 18 points a game. Shoots very well from the outside. I think we just caught him on a night where we were able to play really good defense. And, kind of like you say about showing up and any team can win, basketball is weird in the fact we won 70-49 against English Valley. Yet they hung 82 points on Highland and beat them by 20, and we lost to Highland by 12. Basketball is definitely a weird sport, but no, English Valley, they're a very scrappy team. They shoot really well from the outside. I think we played great defense and just caught them on a cold shooting night.
They had a pretty good football season too. So, like I say, that some of these schools that have been struggling for a while are really working hard to try and put it together. The only other score I have here is the Golden or the Mid Prairie Golden Hawks get a 72-41 win over Tipton. I know the Golden Hawks have a pretty good team, but I don't have any other details on that. Do you guys either one of you had any chance or know anything about Mid Prairie?
I just know it's really good. That's all I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that. I don't know much about them. I see a lot of coverage around the area, but I know that they did play Regina, I believe, earlier in the week. I know that was a big matchup that Regina was able to get a big win against them. But no, they're off to a really solid start to their season.
Well, I guess the big game of the night was Holy Trinity and West Burlington over in West Burlington. I don't think there was any games that were any bigger than that. We had a few details about it, but not too much. But I do know that Holy Trinity was leading after the first quarter, and West Burlington was leading at halftime. But it does look like Holy Trinity pulls out a win. Do you got a score on that, Jeff?
That the final score is all I know about that. That's all I've heard. And
what was it?
I know West Burlington still has a half-game lead on them in the conference standings, but other than that, that's all I know about that one.
Was it 58-51?
59-51.
59-51. Lane Rung looked like he had 14 points in the first half, I think. So I would imagine he had a big game. I'll get a hold of Coach Cheney and catch up on some of that.
Helligy,
I mean. Well, I got Coach Cheney on the brain right now. Coach, you got any? I know you're in the north and they're in the south. What do you think of those West Burlington Holy Trinity teams?
I mean, I haven't, being in the north, it's not really my focus. And unfortunately, we probably won't be playing either team in the conference shootout. But no, that's definitely those two teams. I think, you look at Holy Trinity's record and it's probably not where they want to be, but they're they're a team. I want to say they played. Did they play Waco recently? Holy Trinity.
They did earlier in the year.
Pekin,
They just played Winfield Mount Union, and they did win that
Winfield. And they got a big win against Winfield recently, with a losing record. So I think, Holy Trinity, like you said, Coach Holiday, I think he just got his 100th victory.
He did.
Week. Him and Clay Edwards both did. So,
and they picked up another win against Danville too. So they're on a roll. And but Central Lee's very good, and West Burlington's very good, and Notre Dame's ridiculously good, and Meepo's very good. So they got really good teams on the schedule every night down there. Jeff, do you got any more of those Super Conference South scores?
Yeah, let's talk about the four top teams there. Burlington, Notre Dame, they're still unbeaten. They come away. They're playing New London tonight, who's kind of on the bottom end of that. And they've been playing really well lately. They had a nice win over Van Buren County the other night. And from what I heard, they played really good basketball. But Burlington, Notre Dame took this one 79-45. And then Mediapolis, who is in second in the conference standings, beat Van Buren County 72-37. And then we got Central Lee, who took down Danville 55-41.
Oh, outstanding. That was probably a big game there, that Danville Central Lee. Central Lee seems to have their foot on everybody. They got a win over Meepo earlier, I think this week, actually. They keep hanging in there and playing good. Do you got anything to say about any of those teams, Coach Cheney? I don't know if you know anything about them or not, but you're here, so we might as well.
No, sadly, I probably know more about Van Buren just because of my relationship with Coach Shellman. But, yeah, I'm not that familiar with the South.
Well, Coach Cheney, Coach Shellman did get that win Monday against Fairfield, but he lost Lincoln Bainbridge for the whole season. He was a senior and a big leader on the team. And then Will Coral got hurt against New London, and he may miss at least 2 games, which this would have been one of them, but they need him healthy. Gosh, he had 21 kids to start with. It got down to 13 with injuries and grade problems, and now I think you might be going with 12. I don't know. And that's not very many from freshman to senior, but they're scrappy, and they did get a win this week, so we're wishing him the best. I may be down there Monday for their game. Well, what about Waco? Did they play tonight, or Pekin?
They had the night off.
Okay.
I think L&M, Pekin, and what was the other one? Any teams we didn't mention had the night off, I believe.
All right.
L&M would have had the night off as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I do think that I talked to Coach Swanson at Pekin, and he did tell me they just had 2 games this week, which is a little unusual. Well, is that all the smaller schools? I know Sigourney, I don't have a score on them. I don't even know.
I did not have a score on them either, no.
But if that Kyoto score was right, we did get that. Let's see. Fairfield and Fort Madison. We had the JV game on. I didn't even have that scheduled. But they called me at 1 o'clock, and a group of the parents kind of wanted me to come in, and they offered me, to pay me to come in there. And then I did that, and then I didn't get – I just got 3/4 of it in, and then I drove over to Columbus and was able to get a double header in and got to see a couple pretty good games. The Fort Madison JV looked pretty strong. How did the varsity game come out?
They ended up taking down Fairfield 62-52, and I believe that puts them in a tie for 5th out of 16 at the bottom of that.
Well, big win for Coach Wilson and the Fort Madison Bloodhounds. They hadn't had any wins, I don't think, this year, but they did get a big win here and a big Southeast Conference win. Fairfield's kind of had a tough week, losing to Van Buren, losing to Pekin, and then losing to Fort Madison. I don't know exactly what's going on there. Beersgard seems to be playing really good. He had 31 against, and a losing effort against Van Buren. He had 21 against Pekin. I know against Pekin, Eli got Zillman. He had a bloody nose, and they had to stop the game a couple times to kind of check on his, try to get some causing stuff up in his nose, trying to get that thing to stop bleeding. But he did get a beautiful dunk in that game, which he always does. But Coach Cheney, you coach some teams that were struggling. Fairfield's kind of going through it right now. What can they do to get, back in the winner's circle or going in the right direction?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not as familiar with Fairfield. I saw they did play Van Buren recently, and I don't know. It seems like just looking at their schedule. I mean, there's just like any of these teams. There's not a night where you're just going to show up and go through the motions and pull out a win. So, Fairfield, they have a tough schedule, but it seems kind of like what I'm going with, a team that's quote unquote struggling, but is always fighting to the very end and always in a game. So yeah, as long as they have kids that are not quitting and playing to that final buzzer, they'll work it out.
They did get a win over Centerville, who was ranked.
Oh wow!
And had that Malik kid, that Malachi Rice there was a 3-game stretch where he scored 150 points in those 3 games.
Oh my!
But Fairfield did, they did get that done, but it's been a little back and forth. Hopefully I hope the sun shines on them again pretty soon. But Fort Madison, hey man, they didn't have any wins. They get a win tonight. Jeff, what do you think that does for them?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can get a win and just get some confidence going, that's always going to help, That's all I can say about that. When you're playing, like Coach said, when you're playing Keokuks and Burlingtons and Washingtons every single night, it can be tough on a team that don't quite have all the talent that them other teams have. So, you just got to keep putting the work in. You just got to keep getting after it. And I dealt with that when I played. I think we won 2 games my senior year, but that's not, sometimes that's not always what it's about either. So, building them relationships and just having fun with your friends and getting out there on the court and just doing your best. That's what you got to do.
Essentially, a team that wins 2 games and a team that wins the state championship all do the same thing. You know what I mean? They practice, they play all their games, but it's still building some character there. But I don't know Fort Madison. Fort Madison didn't have the Foy kid earlier in the year, but they do have him now. And Nolan Guzman missed a couple games with the illness or the flu or something, I think. But he's back, and I think getting healthy is really going to be a big help for them. Was there any other SEC scores that you got?
Yeah, the top 2, let's see. Keokuk was playing Washington tonight in the rematch. I watched the first match. You got to see some of the highlights of the Clark kid in that one. Keokuk did win that one 70-50, and that one was in Keokuk, which puts them at 6-0 in conference play and remaining on top. And then Burlington was playing Mount Pleasant, and Burlington came out on top of that one 67-51. And that puts them in second behind Keokuk.
Well, outside of the loss to Keokuk, I don't know that Burlington's lost to anybody in the conference, have they?
No, that's the only loss.
They really seem like they're put a step forward and starting to distance themselves from Mount Pleasant and Washington. It seemed like Washington, Keokuk, and Burlington was the top tier, and then Mount Pleasant, Fairfield, and Fort Madison were kind of battling it out amongst themselves to try to be the top of the middle. But, well, I don't know. Is that all the scores? You got any scores, Coach Cheney, that you know about?
Nope, other than what KCII posted, those were the only scores that I was able to catch.
What about you, Jeff? Are we kind of caught up with the scores there?
That's what I had, buddy.
Well, that's what I got. Well, Coach Cheney, you get a big win tonight, and we're super proud of you. And we sure thank you for coming on. Is there anything else about this Friday night's action that you wanted to say?
No, it was a nice bus ride home. I'll just say that.
Well, I'm super happy for you. You guys, you got a bunch of good kids. You got kids that I'd like to spend time with, and I think they're a fun bunch of kids, and they're good kids. And you got good families, and you got a good school over there. And we appreciate you taking your time with those guys. Jeff, do you have anything else about this here day that we just went through?
I'd just like to say thank you, Coach Cheney, because, I've been doing this for a few years now, and he's always been one of the most hospitable coaches out there. He's always been very welcoming, and, I cheer for them guys. So thank you, Coach, for being a good guy.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the kind words from both of you.
All right. Well, that's all she wrote. Those are your scores. Thanks. We had a great week at Round Guy Radio. We really did. We had big numbers, and the videos we're doing, those games we're putting up, we're getting numbers that we couldn't hardly imagine that we were getting. But I'm averaging pretty close to 250 views a game. It doesn't even matter if it's a JV game. We're getting good audience participation, and people are checking into what we're doing, and I think we're doing a great job. But Round Guy Radio is only as good as the coaches and the experts that we bring in, and we brought you a coach and an expert in tonight. Thanks for being with us, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.